when they began to settle down into permanent cities, they began developing pottery, the extensive use of irrigation. They began building temples and other marks of civilization proper. And the period in which they do that, pottery and so on, from about 1500 BC to around 850 BC. They finally develop things that the old world has been doing now for thousands of years, literally. So in this long process, let's realize that we had to domesticate plants and animals, right? They had to be domesticated. They couldn't remain wild. We had to have plants and animals that would work with and for us. But Mr. Starr makes a very good point here. Not only did we have to domesticate plants and animals, but man also had to domesticate himself to become a city dweller. We had to stop being wild, homeless, wandering nomads and become civilized. We had to domesticate ourselves. And that happened 8,000 years earlier in the Old World than in the New World. Just asinine to think that there is connection between the two in any way. People who say those things don't. They've never. All they watch is you know, histories, mysteries, and crap like that. Anyways, let's go on to the Near East. Changes after 10,000 BC. So we took the whole world up to 10,000 BC. We looked a little bit about America. Now about the Near East after 10,000 BC. They have found sites where people migrated from summer to winter homes, but they're few and far between, sketchy details and stuff. I mean, this is an extra 8,000 years for these details to be eroded away, so that's why the Americans have such a more coherent story about this. Now it appears that prior to 10,000 BC, it was colder and drier in the Near East, in what we call the Middle East today. It was colder and drier, but by 8,000 BC, the climate had settled very much into the modern pattern. Now, some people want to explain the rise of agriculture just by saying that the climate changed and man either had to settle down or was able to settle down. But we can't ignore the factor that he had wiped out a lot of the things he was counting on surviving by hunting and so on. He had wiped a lot of species out, and his numbers were growing. And he had been gaining familiarity, thousands of years, and all this knowledge passed down from generation to generation, a familiarity with plants, and actually a familiarity with animals. We ended up domesticating the cat and the dog. The cat's actually been traced to the Near East as well. And if it was a change in the climate that brought about agriculture, then what brought agriculture around in the New World? That was just accumulation of knowledge, right? But the other was a change. The other was an actual change. Okay. There are two kinds of wheat called einkorn, E-I-N-K-O-R-N, and emmer, E-M-M-E-R. 6-row and 2-row barley, and various root vegetables that they grew in the Near East. Two kinds of wild wheat. They didn't stay wild for long. Well, for quite a while they stayed wild, but we were growing wild wheat, it was domesticated, and then it began to change. Because why would we keep on sowing crappy seeds once we realize what's going on? That the better seeds turn into better plants next time, and the crappy seeds we should eat. Now there's a place called Mount Carmel, C-A-R-M-E-L, where the Natufians lived. Natufians. So if you want to know more about that, there that is. They were one of the early people to develop their food gathering skills so that they could live in the same place. And it has a picture here of a sickle, not a scythe, a sickle, which the Natufians used. And it looks like a knife. And it has sort of a serrated edge, 3 different pieces of flint embedded into a piece of wood or antler, a piece of bone or antler. And you embed those in there, and you can use that to cut the grain stalks off. These Natufians are kind of interesting. They built rock huts that would fall down once in a while, and they would just rebuild them right on top of that. So they're harvesting. They have special tools to harvest wild grain, but they don't yet have agriculture. They just have developed their gathering skills so far that they can settle down from horticulture, right? They can settle down into one place. Now, there's a cave called Shanidar in Iraq where they found a copper pendant that is about 10,000 years old, or 10,000 BC, 12,000 years old. And so they have to push their limits back a little further to when they think copper might have started being worked. Copper and gold were probably worked for a long time as jewelry, as precious metals, and it probably took a long time to accumulate enough knowledge where a lump of copper could be used for tools, right? If you have something really, really valuable, you're not likely to make a plow out of it, you know. Plowshares made out of titanium would be the height of absurdity. So anyways, and a bit south of this cave at Shanidar, they have discovered domesticated sheep in levels about 9,000 BC. They appear to be domesticated sheep, and it's possible. But carbonized wheat and barley have not yet been found in the Near East sites before 7,000 BC. So it appears that we had quite a relationship with sheep. We were using them probably as a domesticated food source and probably running them around from place to place. Before we developed agriculture, we domesticated some animals. So here ends our section on the development of agriculture and the settling down into permanent cities and so on. And the next step will be to look into early villages and the actual city life and what came about in that way.